All right, let's just jump right in. There's this one ingredient that's, well, it's pretty much everywhere, right? In kitchens all over the globe. But for something so common, it causes a ton of confusion. We're talking culinary debates, arguments at the dinner table, and get this, it even has a secret hidden deep inside your DNA. So today, yeah, we're gonna crack the code on what I'm calling the Coriander Conundrum.
So, first things first, the name. You've been there, right? You're looking at a recipe and it says one thing, but you've always called it something else. Is it coriander or is it cilantro? Are they the same thing? It's a question that honestly messes with a lot of us, even folks who've been cooking for years. But don't you worry, we are going to get that sorted out.
But, the name thing, that's only half the story. The real mystery, the one that divides people, is the taste. For millions of people, it's this amazing, fresh, bright, kind of citrusy herb. But then there's everyone else. And for them, it tastes like, well, like a mouthful of soap. Just awful floral soap. So what is going on here? Let's find out.
Okay, first mission, let's solve this identity crisis once and for all. We're going to break down this whole name game, and I promise you'll never have to stare at a recipe in confusion again. And this slide right here lays it all out. It's really simple when you see it like this. It's all from the exact same plant, Coriandrum sativum, if you want to go technical. But what we call it totally depends on where you are. So, here in the US and in Canada, when we talk about the fresh green leaves and stems, we call that cilantro. And the dried seeds from that plant, that's coriander. But if you're in the UK, India, Australia, basically most of the rest of the world, they just call the whole thing coriander. Sometimes they'll say fresh coriander, to be clear they mean the leaves. See? The big takeaway is, it's just geography.
All right, so with the name figured out, let's dive into the really fascinating bit. That whole love it or hate it thing. Why do some of us think this herb is delicious while other people are totally repulsed by it? Well, the answer isn't about your taste buds. Nope, it's all about your genes.
And this quote from Chef Mobasir Hassan just hits the nail on the head. He says, if you think cilantro tastes like a bar of Irish Spring, you aren't a picky eater, it's genetic. And that's so important because if you're in that anti-cilantro camp, it validates everything. You're not just being difficult. There is a real biological reason for what you're tasting, and science has actually figured it out. And what's really wild is when you look at how this breaks down across different populations. For people of East Asian descent, it's as high as 21% who report that soapy taste. For Caucasians, it's around 17%. But then, look at this. That number just plummets when you get to cultures where the herb is used all the time. South Asians, Hispanics, people of Middle Eastern descent. We're talking single digits. That right there is a huge clue that this whole thing is genetic. So what's the actual culprit here? Well, scientists have totally zeroed in on it. It's a specific gene called OR6A2. Now that's basically an olfactory receptor gene. Fancy talk for a gene that controls your sense of smell. And if you happen to have a certain version of this gene, your body is just hardwired to be super, super sensitive to certain chemical compounds. So, which compounds are we talking about? Well, that brings us to these things called aldehydes. These are the chemical compounds that give cilantro that unique aroma. But here's the kicker. They also happen to be found in soap. So if you have that specific variation of the OR6A2 gene, your nose is incredibly good at picking up on those aldehydes, and it basically screams soap so loudly that it completely drowns out all the other nice, fresh, citrusy smells that everyone else is enjoying. Okay, so we've sorted out the name thing, we've figured out the whole soap gene thing, which brings us to maybe the most important takeaway for anyone who cooks, and it's this. From a culinary point of view, we're not talking about one ingredient. This one plant actually gives us two completely different ingredients. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. They could not be more different. On one hand, you've got the coriander seeds. They're warm, they're nutty, a little citrusy. You use them in things like dry rubs and curries. You need heat to bring out their flavor. Then you have the leaves, cilantro. They are the total opposite. They're bright, sharp, peppery. They're super delicate, so you add them at the very end to something like a fresh salsa. The bottom line is, you would never, ever swap one for the other. They're not interchangeable. And the science behind this huge difference, it all comes back to chemistry. The fresh leaves, right? They're loaded with those aldehydes we were just talking about, the soapy ones. But the seeds, they have a totally different chemical makeup. Their main flavor compound is something called linalool, and that's what gives them that warm, floral, citrusy taste. It's literally two different worlds of flavor, all coming from the same plant. Okay, so now you've got all the science and the backstory. Let's get practical. How do you actually use this stuff in your own kitchen? Here are a few pro tips to help you buy, store, and cook with both parts of this amazing plant like you really know what you're doing. So when you're buying fresh cilantro, here are 3 simple things to look for. First is what I call the snap test. The stems should be nice and firm, not all sad and limp. Second, the color check. You want really vibrant, deep green leaves. If you see any yellowing, just move on. And finally, the aroma check. Give it a sniff. It should smell bright and fresh. Trust me, if it doesn't smell like anything, it's not going to taste like anything either.
Now, we all know the pain of fresh herbs going slimy in the fridge, right? So here's how you make your cilantro last. First, the bouquet method. Super easy. Just stick it in a glass of water in the fridge like a bunch of flowers. Or there's the paper towel method. Just roll the dry herbs in a paper towel and pop that into a plastic bag. And for the long haul, my personal favorite is the freezing hack. Chop it up, put it in an ice cube tray, and pour a little olive oil over it. You get these perfect little flavor bombs to drop right into your cookie.
Okay, now let's switch over to the seeds. And listen up, because this is probably the single most important rule. You have got to buy them whole, not the pre-ground powder. Why? Because that ground up stuff loses its flavor so fast. All those amazing aromatic oils just disappear. By the time it gets from the factory to the store to your pantry, it can honestly taste like nothing more than dust. So what you want to do instead is use the toast and grind method. It's so easy. You start with your whole seeds, throw them in a dry pan over medium heat for just a couple of minutes. You'll know they're ready when your whole kitchen starts to smell incredible, really warm and citrusy. Then you just grind them up right before you need them. I'm telling you, this one little step is an absolute game changer for flavor. And here's a final, super cool little fact that kind of connects our kitchen back to the farm. You know those little round coriander seeds we've been talking about? Well, technically, they're not seeds. They're tiny little fruits, and each one has 2 halves. So before planting, farmers will often rub them to split them apart. Why? Because each half has its own seed inside, so they can basically double their crop with the same amount of fruit. Just a cool little piece of agricultural cleverness behind one of our favorite spices. So let's wrap this all up. It's one plant, right? But it has 2 different names, pretty much split by geography. It has 2 totally different tastes, and that's decided by your DNA. And most importantly for us in the kitchen, it gives us 2 completely separate ingredients. See, when you break it down like that, it's not so confusing after all. And that really brings us to the end. But it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, if this one super common herb has this much complexity hiding inside, what other secrets are just sitting there in our kitchens, right in plain sight?